In Scotland, rough sleeping is not illegal, and begging isn't illegal unless it is deemed to be aggressive, threatening, abusive, or a breach of the peace by police officers. But this might raise some issues with police discretion. How are they classifying threatening behaviors? Is their classification justified and proportionate, etc., etc.? The issue is that we just don't know because Police Scotland don't release any data on this. And this will be a recurring theme when it comes to Police Scotland. They are very shit at releasing data. Additionally, if you are homeless, you are both statistically more likely to face substance misuse issues and, especially for rough sleepers, you are more visible to the police and so are more likely to get caught. This in turn can lead to further convictions for drug-related offences, which is likely to push you even further into homelessness because criminal convictions will limit your ability to find work if you don't already have it and to find housing, particularly on the private rental market. This kind of revolving door between prisons and homelessness is something that was explicitly recognised in one of the only government sources I could find on the economic cost of homelessness to the state. This was an analysis conducted by the UK Government Department for Communities and Local Government in 2012, which found that not only were formerly homeless people overrepresented in the UK prison population, with 15% of prisoners in 2012 reporting being homeless prior to incarceration compared with just 3% of UK society as a whole, but also that reoffending, or what policymakers call recidivism rates, were much higher for these prisoners upon release. So, 79% of prisoners who reported being homeless prior to being incarcerated went on to be convicted of a further crime within 12 months of release. In that same year, the recidivism rate, i.e. how many people were reconvicted of a further crime within 12 months, for the general prison population was 25.3%. So for 2012, prisoners who had experienced homelessness were over 3 times more likely than other prisoners to be sent back to jail within a year of release. This same report estimated that the total cost to the British state per homeless person per year in terms of benefit payments, health services, visits to A&E, temporary accommodation, interactions with the justice system, etc., was between £24,000 and £30,000 a year, more than other non-homeless citizens, right? So that's in excess of what the state pays for the average person. These figures will likely underestimate the cost of homelessness to the British state for some individuals. The report stated that each individual drug conviction cost the British state £16,000 to administer, and shoplifting convictions cost £3,500 to administer. So if somebody is convicted multiple times of drug or shoplifting offences, as may well be the case within the homeless population, we can see how these costs very quickly balloon. To put this into perspective, in that year, the bang average British salary, right? So the median British income, literally the middle income in Britain, if you were to line them all up in a row, was £26,500 a year. So the equivalent of a middle-class salary was being spent per person per year on an ineffective, costly, and cruel system which did little to address the underlying issue of homelessness. And realistically, until more social housing is built, all of that is very unlikely to change. And again, this is not to say that, police interaction with homeless individuals is never merited. Maybe there are legitimate cases where intervention is necessary in the interests of public safety, and maybe the police are the best positioned to intervene in those cases. However, we should ask, how much more value for money could we achieve if instead of pumping all of this money into police budgets, we pumped more money into building social housing and preventing people becoming homeless in the first place? This would decrease the strain not only on the police, courts, and prisons, but also to all public services where homeless people are more likely to present more frequently with more complex needs and thus require more resource and attention. A 2015 study by the University of York made exactly this conclusion when they presented 4 scenarios of homelessness in the UK, devised from 165 qualitative interviews with homeless individuals. They found that in each of these 4 scenarios, those 4 common types of homelessness, the cost to the British taxpayer of preventing that individual from becoming homeless in the first place would always have been lower than the cost of the services they would require if allowed to remain homeless for a period of 1 year. A third area where we can see the inegalitarian impact of modern policing is in the policing of education. So over the last 20 years, a police-based response to behavioral issues in schools has become increasingly normalized and has served to further intensify the over-policing of underprivileged communities, ensuring that first contact with the police state apparatus begins at an increasingly younger age for these marginalized groups. So we can see this particularly clearly in the United States, where the rollout of campus officers has turned many schools, particularly those serving poor and Black communities, into prison-like establishments where students are frequently arrested and even violently assaulted by police officers for minor behavioral infractions like using their phone in class, disrespecting teachers, and getting into loud arguments. According to a lawsuit submitted by the Southern Poverty Law Center in the United States, between the years 2006 and 2014, police officers deployed in schools in Birmingham, Alabama, used a combination pepper spray and tear gas agent called Freeze Plus P, side effects of which include extreme pain, skin irritation, and trouble breathing, on over 199 students, all of whom were Black.